Good? All right. How's everybody doing? My name is Chuck Earls. I'm the local cold water kayak expert. Just want to kind of go through some things and educate you on cold water. That way, if you're going to get out there 6 months out of the year, basically like October 15th to May 15th, that's dry suit season. So that way you can get out there and you can fish when ultimately the fishing is the best. So this is an example of what your dry suit can do. Obviously, you're not going to be fishing in those conditions. This was just an extreme test. Make sure my suit was going to do what it's designed to do, and my underlayers as well, in the worst case scenario. So we'll go through all that. We'll go through the underlayers. We'll go through the dry suit. We'll go through some of the safety gear that I use, and kind of just give you like a crash course on how to stay safe out there. First and foremost, it's not if, it's when. Just like anything else, there is a time when it's going to happen. So you don't want to go out there and think that I'm not going to flip over, or I'm in a certain style boat that's not, or a kayak that's not going to flip over, because it happens when you're least expecting it. It could be anybody from, somebody that just got into a kayak to a 10-year veteran that, has thousands of hours on the water. It just takes that one lapse of judgment to end up in the water. So you always want to dress for the swim, and you also want to practice re-entry, which is basically what we're doing out there. So cold water dangers. First and foremost, when you hit that cold water, you're going to hit the involuntary gasp reflex, which is filling your lungs with air or water. If you're not wearing your life jacket, you'll fill your lungs with water and instantly drown. At the same time, your blood pressure is going through a massive spike because it's trying to rush to the core and get away from that cold water that's against your skin. And that's within the first second of hitting that water. After you get through that, what you do is you go through the maximum intensity cold shock, which is 2 to 10 minutes just of hyperventilating. You want to think like jumping into a cold swimming pool. You know how it takes your breath away and you can't think about anything else except for trying to get your breath under control. That's what's happening within that 2 to 10 minute window. After that, you can start to get yourself under control, start to try to get back into your kayak. But if you're not wearing the right equipment, the right safety equipment, you've already started to lose the dexterity in your fingers and your legs. Your brain is not thinking properly because the hypothermia is starting to set in. So after all that, basically you're going to hit the hypothermia stage, which is when your body basically starts to shut down. So if you're in the water 10, 20, 30 minutes, your brain's going to shut down. You're not going to be able to use your hands or your legs. You're not going to be able to try to self-rescue yourself. And eventually you'll just become unconscious and most likely perish. So it's not just one thing in the cold water that's going to kill you. It's not just the hypothermia. It's not just the increased blood pressure, which can cause heart attacks. It's everything collectively. So from the time that you leave the shoreline to the time you come back, there's a lot of different factors that can take your life. So that's why we want to prepare for it. Knowledge is power, and also so is the right equipment. The 120 rule. Most people have heard about the 120 rule. If the air temperature plus the water temperature equals 120 degrees, they say you don't need any thermal protection. Well, what if the water temperature is 40 and the air temperature is 80? So we're still at 120, but you can't get out of that 40-degree water. Still going to take your life. So you want to just take any of those rules, the 120 rule or any of those published rules, throw them out the window. If you want the facts, you could go to coldwatersafety.org or the National Center for Cold Water Safety. He's got everything legitimately on there. But the thing that you want to remember is 60 degrees. If it's below 60 degrees, put a dry suit on, or just wait till it warms up. Because at that 60-degree temperature, it's going to take your life pretty quick. Um, One of the most important things I'm sure all of you guys have learned in life is you try to learn from other people's mistakes. And this is one of my buddies. He was out, they were duck hunting actually, in the kayaks. He missed the duck went to dive. Guy's been in a kayak for 10 years. He was in a Jackson Big Rig, which is super stable. Reached over, fell in the water. Couldn't get back into his kayak because he had never practiced. Tried to swim the shore, realized he wasn't going to make it. He was in an inflatable life jacket that had never put the cartridge in. So he's yanking on the thing and it's not inflating. He manages to get back to his kayak, and eventually his buddy comes around the corner and finds him kind of like half unconscious and basically tows him into shore, stripped off his clothes, got him warm and everything. There's another guy. He's out of Tennessee. It was middle of December, out in, I don't know, just like, you know, a backwoods lake, not a whole lot of traffic or any traffic on this day. And he's out there in his kayak, another experienced guy. He flipped over, managed to get back into his kayak, made it all the way back to shore, got onto the dock, and when he hit that dock, he fell unconscious. And at that point, I mean, there's nobody around, right? Fortunately, there was a guardian angel. A boater showed up, just happened to be launching his boat at that time, found him unconscious on the dock, and saved the guy's life. You know, so it's those scenarios where it will happen, and there's a very good possibility that when it happens, you know, it will take your life, just like the gentleman we lost 2 years ago in November on Lake Erie. He wasn't prepared, the wind shifted, he couldn't get back into his kayak, and they found him 2 months later in New York. So you want to think about it like this, you know, at the end of the day, it's not our life to play with, it's our family, our loved ones, you know, the people that care, because when we perish, it only hurts for a moment, but the people that we leave behind, they suffer forever, you know, so that's why you put your life jacket on, you put your dry suit on. And this is a picture of that day when we were out there testing them. So basically, this is what I'm wearing, and this is technically called a semi-dry suit because of the neoprene neck gasket. I do have latex wrist gaskets, so this is completely watertight. This might let a trickle or two down my neck. But it's far more comfortable than your latex neck gaskets that are strangling you the whole time. And, you know, my thing is, if it's too uncomfortable to wear, are you really going to wear it? You know, you want something that's kind of like a compromise. It's not like we're going under waterfalls and doing a bunch of rolls and stuff. So something like this does just fine. I mean, even in those conditions, I might have had half a cup of water down the back of my neck. Just enough to wake you up, but not enough to do anything that's gonna hurt you or affect you. And that's why the underlayers are important. Having the right underlayers that are going to keep you warm, even if you do sweat a little bit or you do get a trickle down your neck or something like that. PFDs, closed cell foam versus inflatables. This is the PFD I wear. It's the NRS Copilot Chinook OS for offshore. It's highly visible. It's got a lot of pockets for, you know, my VHF radio, my personal locator beacon. I have a pocket air horn in here. You know, whistles required on Coast Guard waters, but most boats aren't going to hear a whistle. Pocket air horn they should hear. Also have my safety knife on here and a couple other accessories that I need. But the biggest difference between your closed cell foam and your inflatables is this is guaranteed to work. I could take my knife, I could take a fish hook, I could puncture it, poke it, stab it, cut it, and it's still gonna work. It's still gonna keep me afloat. The inflatables, you puncture that bladder with a hook or something like that, it's done. And that's if it even goes off. You know, maybe the cartridge is bad or it didn't get installed or get installed properly. or there's just a malfunction. Interesting fact, a lot of inflatable manufacturers do not install their cartridge before they send it to you. They just put it in the pocket. Reason they do that, you finish the assembly, they're not liable if there's an issue. You know, not like Mustang, which Mustang works with all our first responders and stuff like that. Their suit or their inflatables come with the cartridge installed. It's ready to basically put on and use. But you know, at the end of the day, it's still a mechanical system that that could potentially fail. So, especially on cold water, wear a regular life jacket. I prefer to wear it all the time, but you know, in the heat of the summer, if you're not going to wear something like that, an inflatable is definitely still better than nothing. Wetsuits obviously is an option for cold water, but the thing with wetsuits, you know, wetsuits are designed to be used wet. They're designed to trap a layer of water in between your body and the suit, and then your body warms that layer of water up. That way, next time you go back in the water, the suit's full, it's occupied, it's not going to let any more cold water into it. The challenge with kayak fishing is generally you're not going to prime your suit. It's not going to be wet, so you still have that, you know, the maximum intensity cold shock and that the involuntary gasp reflex when you initially hit the water. Now, you should be able to pull through that, you know, because it's not going to be a consistent flush of cold water, but it's still going to kind of put you through that phase. The other challenge is it's very restrictive. And with with wetsuits, depending on the temperature, you're going to need a thicker suit. Could be a 5 mil, could be a 7 mil, or a 10 mil suit. So now you have all these different suits that you have to adjust depending on what the temperatures are. Whereas with a dry suit's designed to keep you dry. It's not designed to keep you warm. That's where your underlayers come into play. So those underlayers, you can adjust them depending on if it's a hot day, the water's not that cold, you know, or it's the middle of January and there's you know, a blizzard offshore and you know, winds blowing. So you can make those adjustments and use it no matter what. Gloves are kind of a pain when you're fishing. Generally, I don't wear gloves other than like latex gloves. Just like thick latex gloves from Harbor Freight, the mechanics gloves. Works real good just to kind of keep the water away from your skin when you're touching fish and stuff like that. And it keeps them a little warm. The other thing that I do is I just use regular hunting gloves with hand warmers inside. So my hands are cold from touching the fish. I stick them in the hunting gloves. They're warm within 20 seconds. I can put them back out, put my gloves back under the drawer and go back to doing what I'm doing. You know, so it's an opportunity to warm it up. That being said, I've never found a good all-purpose pair of gloves. You know, the waterproof gloves are not waterproof. The neoprene gloves don't keep you warm. So it's kind of a, you know, kind of a process. You know, with the latex gloves and the winter gloves, you know, it'll at least make it manageable out there. The neoprene balaclava, like what Jason's wearing, that does make a huge difference on the cold days, the windy days, or extreme days like this when you're out there testing your gear. Because when you get your dry suit, you just want to walk off the shoreline, get in the water. Number one, you're earning trust with the dry suit because now you know it works for a fact. You know, instead of like the company says it works. Well, I went in the water in those conditions and I know for a fact that it works. The other thing that you're doing is testing your underlayers. You want to make sure you have the right amount of underlayers underneath that's going to keep you warm in those conditions. With the balaclava in those icy conditions, that's going to kind of help your head stay focused. Because when it's icy like that, and on that day it was -1, I think, with the wind chill. So when I came out of the water without a balaclava, my brain was like in reset mode. It was like I needed a second to kind of figure out what the heck was going on. So it's a great option for the cold days, and you know, when you're testing. Boots, any boots will work. I'm just wearing regular rubber boots there. Some people say, well, how do you get back into your kayak with that? Doesn't it fill with water? Well, some water gets in it, yes. But I have my dry suit in there. I probably have 3 layers of socks underneath the dry suit. So there's really not much room in that boot for water. Maybe a cup. So it doesn't really restrict anything. The key is just finding something that's going to keep you warm enough. You know, especially if you're in a pedal drive because your feet are always up, your toes are going to get cold and it's going to become miserable. So you want to, you know, some of the neoprene boots work fairly good. On the really cold days, again, I go back to hunting boots. They're not waterproof, but you know, it is going to keep me a lot warmer than, you know, some kind of neoprene boot with that insulation in there. Real quick, recommended safety gear and skills. Oh, cool, we got plenty of time. Always want to take, you know, some water on the water and some high protein snacks, especially if you're offshore. If you're out there 2 miles offshore fishing, you know, 6 hours later, you start to get very hungry, you start to get very weak. You know, you don't realize how much energy you exerted out there. So having some kind of, you know, non-perishable snack that you can eat and refuel the tank while you're out there. And obviously water, you know, especially on the hot days, water is going to make a difference because you're not going to realize how dehydrated you get until it hits you. And, you know, finding yourself dehydrated or out of energy, or even seasick, you know, 2 miles offshore on a kayak is not a very comfortable feeling. We went through like the hand warmers, sound signaling device. We went through that. High visibility safety flag. You can't really see it, but my kayak over there with the tall, bright yellow flag. That is very important. You know, especially on big water, we're hard to see. Kayaks are very hard to see, especially when they're going down in the swells. You know, boats might be looking that captain is scanning the horizon, but when he looks in your direction, you're in that trough and he doesn't know you're there. So having a tall, high visibility safety flag is going to make you a lot more visible to the boaters or your buddies on the water as well. You know, have something that's bright, have something that's nice and tall. You want to think, if you get into like 1 foot chop, you know, and you drop down there, your kayak disappears. You still want that flag to be sticking up, grabbing people's attention. VHF radios and the personal locator beacons. This is very important whenever you're doing offshore stuff, because you can communicate, I mean, most importantly with the Coast Guard, but also the other vessels on the water, and your group, whoever's out there with you. Even if they're a little bit away, you know, a quarter mile away, they stop to catch a fish or something like that, you still have that lines of communication. And then the personal locator beacon, this will basically get you rescued anywhere in the world, no matter what. Of course, unless the battery dies, but they've been around forever. I think there's a 5-year warranty on the battery. You can send it back in and they'll replace the battery for you. But the difference between your VHF and your personal locator beacon is VHF works off a line of sight. So depending on how far away you are, you might not be able to reach the boat with this, or the Coast Guard, which they do have tall radio towers. They could pick it up for quite a while. But what if you're drifting to Canada, you know, you're 30 miles over and nobody's hearing that signal because it's not traveling far enough. With the personal locator beacon, that works off the satellites. So no interference, it sends it up to the satellites, sends it back down to the rescuing authorities, and then your phone's gonna start ringing. I know because I've accidentally set it off a couple of times. They will come look for you if you don't respond. Very good device, especially if you're offshore on Lake Erie or the ocean or any kind of big water like that. Or even hunting or hiking in the woods. When nothing else will work, your cell phone, your VHF radio, when nothing else will work, that personal locator beacon will always work. First aid kit's always a great thing to carry. I carry the NRS little paddle first aid kit. It's got everything I need, and it has a dry bag as well, so everything stays dry. Swim testing your gear. We talked about that with the dry suit, getting out there and just feeling how the water is going to feel, you know, how the suit's going to feel, how the underlayers are going to work. But the other thing that you want to do while you're out there is practice your self-rescue and re-entry, especially if you're cold water kayak fishing, because one of the most important things is getting out of that cold water and back into your boat. But just take your kayak off the boat ramp or drag it off the beach, get it into water that you can't touch, you know, and flip it over and then try to get back in. The nice thing is, if you fail to get back in, you just grab your kayak and you drag it up the shoreline, you know, and you rest and you're good. You could try another day or when you get more energy. But the other thing that it's going to do is you're going to identify where that stopping point is on that kayak and subconsciously set a stop. So next time you almost make the mistake and flip over, subconsciously your body adjusts, you know, to adjust the stability of the boat. So I do a lot of re-entry practice. I think it's one of probably the most important skill for a kayaker. That's one thing that's going to save your life. You know, if you can get back into your kayak, chances are you can get back to shore. On Lake Erie, you want to be prepared for at least 2 hours in the water. If you can't get back into your kayak or your kayak sinks or floats away, in the wintertime it could be 2 to 4 hour response time from the Coast Guard. Lorraine Coast Guard shuts down, so really you have Detroit. I think we might have a boat out of Cleveland, but by the time they get on the water and get to you, it could be 2 hours. So you got to make sure that your dry suit and your underlayer is going to keep you warm. And obviously without that dry suit or underlayers, they would be coming to get a body. So lastly, float plan and the buddy system. You always want to leave a float plan, even on the small inland lakes. You know, tell your loved one where you're launching, where you're heading, and what time you plan on being back. That way, you know, if you're supposed to be back at 5 o'clock, 5:30 comes around, your wife calls and says, hey, thought you were coming in at 5, and you're like, no, the fishing's great, it's okay, I'm safe, you know, everything's good. But if you have a heart attack or you fall off your kayak and hit your head, or you're in a dangerous situation, she calls at 5 o'clock, she can't get a hold of you. Now she's calling the rescuing authorities, telling you exactly where you launched, exactly where you were heading. Especially on a big body of water, you know, if they know where to start, chances are they're going to find you. You know, so leaving that float plan with somebody, just so people know where you are. You know, we never know what can happen. I'm not saying don't go out there and take risks. Go out there and live life to the fullest. We only get one life to live, but you know, just kind of take the extra preparations just to make sure that you know, you get an extra day. And then the buddy system, obviously going out with more than one person on the water is always a good thing. Like I said, heart attacks, or you hit your head, or like I had a buddy that hooked himself, and the pain made him basically pass out. He passed out, fell off his kayak. You know, so like in that type of situation, if nobody else is there, it puts you in a bad place. Swim test your gear, practice re-entry frequently. Like I said before, it is extremely, extremely important. Probably the most important skill a kayaker or a kayak angler can have is knowing how to get back in your kayak. And, you know, how to self-rescue, how to rewrite it, and all that good stuff. So, underlayers. As far as my underlayers underneath the dry suit, I'm wearing a combination of things. I'm wearing, merino wool, polyester, nylon, fleece, mainly synthetic materials that are still going to have warming principles, even if they get a little wet or a little damp, or, you know, sometimes on Lake Erie, you'll go out in the morning, especially in early spring or winter time, you go out in the morning and you're freezing. Well, the sun comes up, it warms up 15 degrees, you know, and now you're sweating and you're just drenching your underlayers with sweat. So having those right materials, even if they get wet, you're still going to stay warm with them. Never want to wear any cotton. Cotton, when it gets wet, it wicks your body temperature. So stay away from cotton. Go with anything, like I said, wool, polyester, nylon, or fleece. And you can buy very expensive underlayers, or you can just go to the thrift store and pick out the right fabric. Especially like the merino wool is very expensive, but it's very, very good for underlayers. That merino wool sweater, I think I picked it up for $4. Has a little hole, just a little hole, no big deal, but it keeps me warm, you know. So you could spend your money on your dry suit. If you're under a budget, you don't have to run out and buy the best underlayers on the market, because it's underneath the suit. Who cares what it looks like, as long as it keeps you warm and it does its job. Like I said before, you know, we owe it to our loved ones to stay safe out there. That's my daughter. She's 17 and a half years old now, and she doesn't really like to fish much, but she loves to be on the water. So, do you guys have any questions on cold water or anything? What kind of kayak do you have?
Big fish.
What kind?
Big fish 108.
Okay.
Yeah. We're actually thinking about getting a quarter dude here soon. Come up with a trip with them.
Oh, okay.
So we researched, talking about doing a little walleye fishing up Lake Erie. Never pulled the trigger yet.
Right.
Bays up there, bass fishing and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. And at the show, I always do $50 off as well. So if you book at the show. Yeah.
You can't see it.
All right.
What is your dry suit?
This is a Kokatat Hydra Supernova.
You like it?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
looked at one of those. Some of the reviews were that the inside started peeling on them.
Well, this suit is about 8 years old. I've used the crap out of it, and I mean, it's on the inside. Other than, you know, being a little dirty, it's like brand new.
Now to do layers, do you need to get a bigger size?
They actually size them. This is a large.
Is it a large?
Yeah, they size them so that you can have your underlayers underneath. So
They're a little bigger than me, but
they're built a little big, basically. And there is a sizing chart on the website, so you can measure yourself and, you know, get what you think is going to feel good.
I like this because I was in the river 2 days ago out here.
Yeah.
And it was 42 degrees. The water was.
Oh yeah.
Which was surprising because we just had ice out.
Right.
And it was still 42 degrees. It was frozen across 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Like,
seems
give
like.
me something like that. I can still fish wearing that, I think. So.
Yeah, you know, number one, it's a peace of mind. Number two, it guarantees that cold water is not going to kill you. I mean, as much as a guarantee you can get.
I'm in river systems mostly, so I'm not far from shore, but it's not just once you get to shore, you're out of the water, then what?
Right.
And if you're wet, you're in trouble.
Yeah. And, you know, one thing, obviously, a fish hook will go through anything. Third trip out, I put a fish hook through right here. And so you can barely see it. So I was pretty upset at the time. I had just bought this suit.
I seal it just like I do waders.
That's what you do, is aqua seal. A little bit of, I put a little bit of painter's tape on there, and then I put aqua seal on the inside. And that was what, 8 years ago when I made that repair?
Yeah, I think I'll get me one of these. I like this up here at the top with the adjustable.
Yeah. You know,
Because I got a buddy that has one, and this is real long. And he doesn't like it too much. He's afraid to cut it or anything, because it's just strictly neoprene. Doesn't have any of this or any.
yeah, well, he's probably got the latex wrist gasket, or neck gasket, right? Like this type. Yeah, it's very restrictive, you
Thanks for
know.
the info.
You're welcome. Thank you. Did you guys have any questions? You good? All right. All right, guys, thanks. Come on down to the Columbus Fishing Expo if you're watching on the phone, and check us out.